Please send the emergency team now.
The whale, she attacked him. She won't let him go. Please, hurry.
What you're about to hear is the story of Park Ji-hoon, a 34-year-old marine animal specialist whose final moments would expose the dark secrets of South Korea's marine entertainment industry. For 7 years, Park believed he had formed an unbreakable bond with Haneul, a massive 3,500-pound beluga whale. But on one freezing December morning in Seoul, that bond would shatter in the most horrific way imaginable. This isn't just another workplace accident. What really happened that day has been systematically covered up by one of Asia's most powerful entertainment conglomerates, and the security footage I'm about to describe will change everything you think you know about marine mammal captivity. We've compiled exclusive evidence, internal corporate documents, witness testimonies, and expert analysis that has never been shared publicly until now. Every detail of this investigation, from Park's tragic background to the corporate cover-up that followed his death, is documented in this video. If you want to stay informed about stories like this that expose the truth behind industries that put profits over human lives, make sure to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon for notifications. We're one of the few channels willing to investigate these dangerous cover-ups, and your support helps us continue bringing you these critical stories that mainstream media won't touch. Park Ji-hoon didn't stumble into marine biology by accident. Growing up in the coastal city of Busan, he spent his childhood fascinated by the creatures that lived beneath the waves of the East Sea. While other kids played video games, young Ju-hoon was studying whale migration patterns and memorizing the scientific names of every marine species he could find. His passion was infectious. Teachers at Busan National University noticed his exceptional dedication when he enrolled in their marine biology program in 2010. By his third year, he was already working part-time at the university's marine research facility, helping care for injured dolphins and small whales that were brought in for rehabilitation. Ju-hoon had this incredible intuition with marine mammals, recalls Dr. Kim Min-seo, his former professor. He could read their behavior in ways that took other students years to learn. The animals seemed to trust him instantly, which is remarkable because marine mammals are usually very wary of humans. After graduating with honors in 2014, Park could have pursued research or conservation work in the field. Instead, he chose a path that would ultimately lead to his death. He accepted a position at Seoul Marine Park, South Korea's largest marine entertainment facility. The decision puzzled his professors and classmates. Park was passionate about marine conservation and had often criticized the captivity industry during his university years. But the job offer from Seoul Marine Park was too tempting to refuse. They were offering him the chance to work directly with beluga whales, one of his favorite species. What Park didn't know was that Seoul Marine Park had specifically targeted him for recruitment. Internal documents later revealed that the facility had been monitoring top marine biology graduates across South Korea, looking for candidates who combined technical expertise with the kind of emotional investment in animals that would make them less likely to quit when faced with ethical dilemmas. Seoul Marine Park wasn't just another aquarium. Owned by the massive Daehan Entertainment Corporation, it was a flagship facility designed to showcase South Korea's technological prowess and cultural sophistication to international visitors. The park's centerpiece was the Arctic Ocean Experience, a massive complex housing beluga whales, Arctic seals, and polar bears in what was marketed as the most advanced marine habitat in Asia. But behind the gleaming glass walls and state-of-the-art filtration systems lay a darker reality. Seoul Marine Park was a profit-driven enterprise that prioritized spectacle over animal welfare, and the pressure to maintain profitable shows often led to dangerous shortcuts in safety protocols. The facility housed 12 beluga whales in a series of interconnected tanks that, while impressive by industry standards, were still a fraction of the space these animals would inhabit in the wild. In their natural Arctic habitat, Belugas travel hundreds of miles annually, diving to depths of over 1,000 feet and living in complex social pods that can include dozens of individuals. At Seoul Marine Park, they performed choreographed routines for crowds of tourists who paid premium prices to watch these gentle giants interact with their human trainers. The shows were carefully scripted to emphasize the supposed harmony between humans and whales, but the reality behind the scenes was far more complex and dangerous. Among the facility's beluga whales, one stood out for both his size and his troubled history. Haneul, whose name means sky in Korean, was a massive male beluga weighing 3,500 pounds and measuring over 18 feet in length. Captured from the Arctic Ocean as a juvenile in 2009, he had spent over a decade in various captivity facilities before arriving at Seoul Marine Park in 2016. Haneul's early years in captivity had been marked by behavioral problems that marine mammal experts recognized as signs of severe psychological distress. He had attacked trainers at 2 previous facilities, incidents that were quietly settled out of court and buried in confidential legal agreements. The whale's aggressive history was carefully concealed from Seoul Marine Park staff and the public. Official documentation described Haneul as well-socialized and suitable for trainer interaction, but internal veterinary records told a different story of an animal struggling with the psychological trauma of prolonged captivity. Dr. Sarah Chun, a marine mammal behaviorist who later consulted on the investigation into Park's death, explains the psychological toll that captivity takes on highly intelligent species like beluga whales. Belugas are incredibly social and intelligent animals with complex emotional lives. In captivity, they often develop symptoms that closely resemble post-traumatic stress disorder in humans: hypervigilance, aggression, repetitive behaviors, and social withdrawal. When Park Ji-hoon was assigned to work with Haneul in early 2017, he was told that he was being given a special opportunity to work with the facility's most magnificent specimen. Management portrayed the assignment as a promotion, recognizing Park's exceptional skills with marine mammals. What they didn't tell him was that Haneul had already been through 4 different primary trainers in less than 2 years. Each previous trainer had requested reassignment after experiencing what they described as increasingly concerning aggressive behaviors from the whale. Park approached his new assignment with characteristic enthusiasm and dedication. He spent weeks studying Haneul's behavioral patterns, reading every piece of available documentation about the whale's history and preferences. He began spending extra hours at the facility, sitting beside Haneul's tank and simply observing the whale's movements and reactions. Ju-hoon was completely devoted to understanding Haneul, recalls Lee Sung-min, a fellow zookeeper who worked closely with Park. He would arrive early and stay late, taking detailed notes about everything: what Haneul ate, how he swam, how he responded to different stimuli. Ju-hoon believed that if he could just understand the whale well enough, he could help him. Initially, Park's approach seemed to be working. Haneul appeared more responsive to Park's cues than he had been to previous trainers. The whale would approach when Park called and seemed to engage more actively during training sessions. Park interpreted these responses as signs of a developing bond between human and whale. But marine mammal experts who later reviewed video footage of Park's early interactions with Haneul saw something different. What Park viewed as positive engagement, they recognized as a predator's assessment behavior. Haneul was studying Park, learning his patterns and vulnerabilities. Over the course of 2017 and 2018, Park became Seoul Marine Park's star trainer. His shows with Haneul drew large crowds and received glowing reviews from visitors who were amazed by the apparent harmony between human and whale. Park's confidence in his relationship with Haneul grew stronger with each successful performance. Behind the scenes, however, concerning incidents were mounting. Haneul had begun displaying what animal behaviorists call redirected aggression, taking out his frustration and stress on objects in his environment. He would ram the tank walls with increasing frequency and had destroyed several pieces of enrichment equipment. More troubling were the moments when Haneul's behavior toward Park shifted unexpectedly. During training sessions, the whale would sometimes ignore commands or perform behaviors that hadn't been requested. On several occasions, he had bumped into Park with more force than necessary. Incidents that Park dismissed as accidents, but that concerned observers recognized as testing behaviors. Dr. Kim Yun-soo, Seoul Marine Park's head veterinarian, documented these incidents in internal reports that would later become crucial evidence in the investigation following Park's death. Her notes reveal a pattern of escalating aggressive behaviors that should have triggered immediate safety reviews. Subject shows increasing signs of stress-related aggression, Dr. Kim wrote in a report dated November 2018. Recommend immediate reduction in direct trainer contact and comprehensive behavioral assessment. Current interaction protocols may be unsafe. The report was submitted to park management but was apparently never acted upon. When investigators later questioned executives about the ignored warnings, they claimed the reports were under review at the time of the fatal incident. As 2019 progressed, the warning signs became impossible to ignore. Haneul's behavior during shows became increasingly unpredictable. He would sometimes refuse to perform requested behaviors, leaving Park to improvise in front of confused audiences. Other times, he would perform with excessive force, creating powerful waves that soaked spectators and made Park struggle to maintain his balance. More concerning were the changes in Haneul's behavior outside of showtimes. Security cameras captured footage of the whale spending hours floating motionlessly at the surface of his tank, a behavior never observed in wild belugas and considered a sign of severe psychological distress in captivity. Haneul also began displaying what marine behaviorists call stereotypic behaviors, repetitive actions that serve no functional purpose and indicate mental disturbance. He would swim in tight circles for hours at a time, or repeatedly push objects to the same corner of his tank only to redistribute them and start over. Most disturbing of all was Haneul's increasing fixation on Park himself. The whale began following Park's movements around the facility with an intensity that should have been recognized as predatory behavior. When Park was working with other animals or giving tours to visitors, Haneul would position himself at the section of his tank closest to Park's location and maintain visual contact for extended periods. It was like Haneul was studying him, recalls maintenance worker Choi De-young, who observed these interactions while performing routine tank cleaning. The whale would watch Ju-hoon constantly, turning his head to follow him around the building. It was unnerving, but Ju-hoon seemed to think it meant Haneul loved him. Park's interpretation of Haneul's behavior reflected a dangerous psychological phenomenon common among people who work closely with captive animals. He had developed what experts call anthropomorphic attachment, projecting human emotions and motivations onto an animal that operated according to entirely different psychological principles. This attachment was strengthened by Park's personal circumstances. Like many young professionals in Seoul, he lived alone in a small apartment and had limited social connections outside of work. His relationship with Haneul had become the primary source of meaning and emotional fulfillment in his life. In social media posts from late 2019, Park wrote extensively about his partnership with Haneul, describing the whale as his best friend and the most important relationship in my life. Friends and family who read these posts later said they were concerned about Park's emotional dependence on his work, but none realized the danger he was placing himself in. The final warning came just 3 weeks before the fatal attack. During a routine training session, Haneul grabbed Park's wetsuit with his teeth and held him underwater for nearly 30 seconds before releasing him. Park surfaced gasping and shaking, but when colleagues suggested reporting the incident to management, he refused. Haneul was just playing. Park insisted, according to witness statements collected after his death. He didn't mean any harm. He knows I trust him completely. This incident was captured on security cameras and later analyzed by marine mammal experts as part of the investigation into Park's death. Their conclusion was unanimous. Haneul's behavior was a clear test of Park's vulnerability, a predatory assessment disguised as play. Dr. Michael Torres, an American marine behaviorist who consulted on the case, was blunt in his assessment. What we see in that footage is a predator testing his prey. Haneul was determining whether Park would fight back, how strong he was, and how easily he could be subdued. It was a rehearsal for what would happen 3 weeks later. December 15, 2019, began like any other day at Seoul Marine Park. The facility was closed to visitors for the winter maintenance period, giving staff an opportunity to perform equipment upgrades and provide additional training for the animals without the pressure of daily shows. Park arrived at work early, as was his habit, and began his routine inspection of the Beluga whale facility. Security cameras captured him moving through the building with his usual confidence, checking water quality readings and reviewing the night reports from security staff. At 9:15 a.m., Park entered the trainer preparation area adjacent to Haneul's tank. He spent 20 minutes reviewing training plans and preparing the fish that would be used for positive reinforcement during the session. Colleagues who saw him during this period noted that he seemed relaxed and looking forward to working with Haneul without the distractions of public shows. What none of them realized was that Haneul had been displaying heightened agitation since the early morning hours. Night security footage shows the whale swimming in rapid, tight circles and repeatedly spy-hopping, lifting his head above water to scan his environment. This behavior typically indicates high stress levels and increased alertness in beluga whales. At 9:47 a.m., Park entered the training area wearing his standard wetsuit and carrying a bucket of fish for the session. Security cameras captured his final interactions with Haneul, footage that would later be analyzed frame by investigators and animal behavior experts. Initially, the session appeared to proceed normally. Haneul approached Park's location and seemed responsive to basic commands. Park's body language was relaxed and confident as he began the routine that he had performed hundreds of times before. But animal behavior experts who analyzed the footage noted subtle signs that Park missed or misinterpreted. Haneul's movements were more deliberate than usual, his posture showed signs of tension, and his vocalizations were pitched at frequencies associated with agitation rather than contentment. At 9:52 a.m., Park made the decision that would cost him his life. Instead of conducting the training session from the platform edge as protocol required, he entered the water to work with Haneul directly. This deviation from safety procedures was not unusual. Park had been entering the water with Haneul regularly for over 2 years without incident. What happened next occurred with shocking suddenness. As Park treaded water near the center of the tank, Haneul approached from below with explosive speed. The whale's massive jaws opened wide and clamped down on Park's torso, immediately crushing his ribcage and puncturing both lungs. The attack was captured from multiple camera angles, providing investigators with unprecedented documentation of a predatory assault by a marine mammal. The footage shows Park's face briefly above water, his expression registering shock and terror before Haneul dragged him beneath the surface. What followed was 18 minutes of systematic predation that would haunt everyone who witnessed it. Haneul employed hunting techniques that belugas use in the wild to subdue large prey, shaking Park violently to ensure incapacitation before beginning the process of consumption. The first facility staff member to witness the attack was Lee Sung-min, Park's closest colleague, who arrived at the training area at 9:55 a.m. for a scheduled equipment inspection. His witness statement, filed with investigators, provides a harrowing account of those final moments. I heard splashing and what sounded like Ju-hoon calling out, so I rushed to the tank. When I got there, I saw Haneul with Ju-hoon in his mouth. The water was already turning red with blood. I started screaming for help and hit the emergency alarm, but it was too late. Haneul was treating Ju-hoon like prey. Lee's emergency call brought other staff members running, but none were equipped to intervene in such a situation. Seoul Marine Park's emergency protocols, designed for minor injuries and equipment failures, had no provision for a full-scale predatory attack by one of their animals. Dr. Kim Yun-soo arrived with tranquilizer equipment within 8 minutes of the initial alarm, but Haneul's size and state of arousal made sedation extremely difficult. The first dart had minimal effect due to the whale's massive body weight and heightened adrenaline levels. By the time emergency responders from the Seoul Fire Department arrived, Park had been underwater for over 15 minutes. The paramedics were forced to wait helplessly as Dr. Kim attempted to sedate Haneul enough to safely retrieve Park's body from the tank. When Haneul finally succumbed to the sedatives and released his grip, what emergency responders found in the tank challenged the limits of their professional training. Park's body showed evidence of systematic predation. His torso had been crushed by Haneul's powerful jaws, and significant portions of tissue had been consumed. The medical examiner's report, which took weeks to complete due to the unprecedented nature of the case, documented injuries consistent with predatory attack by a large marine mammal. Dr. Park's official cause of death was listed as massive trauma and drowning following predatory assault, but the clinical language couldn't capture the horror of what had actually occurred. Perhaps most disturbing was the discovery that Park had remained conscious for several minutes after the initial attack. Evidence suggested that he was aware of what was happening to him, as Haneul systematically treated him as prey rather than the trusted partner he believed himself to be. In the immediate aftermath of Park's death, Seoul Marine Park and its parent corporation, Daehan Entertainment, launched an aggressive damage control campaign designed to minimize legal liability and prevent regulatory crackdowns that could threaten their profitable marine entertainment operations. Within hours of the incident, corporate lawyers had arrived at the facility to secure all video footage and documentation related to the attack. Staff members were required to sign expanded non-disclosure agreements and were warned that discussing the incident with media or investigators could result in immediate termination and legal action. The initial press release from Daehan Entertainment was a masterpiece of corporate deception. Seoul Marine Park is deeply saddened to confirm the accidental death of our valued team member Park Ji-hoon during a routine animal care procedure. This tragic incident appears to have been the result of an unprecedented animal behavior that could not have been predicted or prevented. We are cooperating fully with authorities and have suspended all marine mammal programs, pending a comprehensive safety review. The statement was carefully crafted to suggest that Park's death was an unforeseeable accident rather than the predictable result of ignoring documented warning signs and maintaining dangerous interaction protocols with a psychologically damaged predator. What the public wasn't told was that Daehan Entertainment executives had been aware of Haneul's aggressive history for years. Internal emails obtained through legal discovery revealed that the company had purchased Haneul from his previous facility specifically because he was available at a significant discount due to his behavioral issues. Even more damning was evidence that company executives had discussed the possibility of trainer injuries as early as 2017. Meeting minutes from a corporate risk assessment session included calculations of potential legal costs associated with animal-related incidents and strategies for minimizing liability through legal settlements and media management. The investigation revealed that Haneul had been involved in serious incidents at 3 different facilities before arriving at Seoul Marine Park, with each transfer accompanied by increasingly elaborate cover-ups of his violent history. Corporate executives had knowingly placed a killer whale in direct contact with unsuspecting trainers while concealing the animal's documented history of human aggression. Corporate emails revealed the callous calculation behind these decisions. In one particularly damning exchange, a Daehan Entertainment executive wrote, "Haneul generates approximately 2.3 billion won annually in ticket sales and merchandising. even accounting for potential legal settlements. Maintaining him in performance rotation remains highly profitable. The executive had literally placed a monetary value on human life and determined that Park's death would be an acceptable business cost if it occurred more than 2 years after Haneul's placement at the facility. The psychological profile of Haneul revealed the fundamental cruelty of marine mammal captivity and its inevitable psychological consequences for highly intelligent species. Despite years of interaction with humans, genetic and neurological analysis showed that Haneul retained all of his predatory instincts while losing the social behaviors that normally regulate aggression in wild populations. Dr. Amanda Foster, a marine mammal behaviorist who studied Haneul's case, explained the psychological transformation that captivity had wrought. Beluga whales are highly social animals that depend on complex pod relationships for psychological stability. In captivity, deprived of these relationships and forced into artificial environments, they often develop severe behavioral disorders that can include predatory aggression toward humans. The attack on Park followed patterns documented in other marine mammal facilities around the world. Haneul had identified Park as vulnerable prey through months of observation and had planned and executed his attack with the systematic precision of an apex predator. Most chilling was the discovery that Haneul had been practicing predatory behaviors in the weeks leading up to the attack. Security footage showed him repeatedly grabbing and shaking inanimate objects in his tank, perfecting the techniques he would later use to kill Park. This wasn't a sudden snap or an emotional outburst, explained Dr. Foster. This was a calculated predatory assault by an animal whose mind had been broken by years of captivity and whose natural instincts had been redirected toward humans as prey. Following the criminal convictions and civil settlements, Seoul Marine Park was forced to close its marine mammal programs permanently. Haneul and the facility's other beluga whales were transferred to a sea sanctuary in Iceland where they could live in more natural conditions for the remainder of their lives. Haneul died 18 months after his transfer, succumbing to complications related to the chronic stress and neurological damage caused by over a decade in captivity. His necropsy revealed extensive brain damage consistent with prolonged psychological trauma, providing scientific confirmation of the mental torture he had endured in South Korean facilities. The whale's death marked the end of a tragic story that began with his capture as a juvenile and culminated in his transformation into a killer whose victims included both himself and the human who believed he loved him. Park Ji-hoon's death catalyzed significant changes in South Korea's approach to marine animal captivity. The Park Ji-hoon Memorial Act, passed by the National Assembly in 2021, banned the import of new marine mammals for entertainment purposes and required existing facilities to meet strict new safety and welfare standards. The legislation also established a victim compensation fund for families affected by marine mammal attacks and created whistleblower protections for facility employees who report safety violations or animal welfare concerns. Park's family used their legal settlement to establish the Park Ji-hoon Foundation for Marine Animal Welfare, which works to expose conditions at marine entertainment facilities and advocate for the retirement of performing marine mammals to sea sanctuaries. Ju-hoon loved those animals more than anything, said his sister, Park Mi-young, at the foundation's inaugural event. But he was betrayed by an industry that turned his compassion into a weapon against him. We're working to make sure no other family has to endure what we've experienced. The foundation has become a powerful voice for change in South Korea, working with international organizations to document conditions at marine facilities and push for stronger legal protections for both animals and workers. The story of Park Ji-hoon and Haneul forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about marine entertainment and the psychological cost of captivity on highly intelligent species. Every ticket sold to watch performing marine mammals supports an industry built on the systematic torture of creatures whose minds cannot adapt to artificial environments. These facilities don't create bonds between humans and animals. They create dangerous illusions that inevitably lead to tragedy. Park's death was not an accident or an anomaly. It was the predictable result of an industry that prioritizes profit over the welfare of both animals and humans. The marine entertainment industry continues to operate around the world, continues to capture intelligent marine mammals from the wild, and continues to place vulnerable animals and trusting humans in dangerous proximity while hiding the psychological damage that captivity inflicts on these creatures. Every performing whale or dolphin represents a potential future tragedy. Every trainer working with these animals is at risk of becoming another Park Ji-hoon, another victim of an industry that treats both human and animal lives as acceptable losses in pursuit of entertainment revenue. Park believed that his love for Haneul was reciprocated, that their relationship transcended the normal boundaries between human and animal. His death proved that no amount of human compassion can overcome the psychological damage that captivity inflicts on apex predators, and that the bonds we imagine with these creatures exist only in our own minds. The truth is simple and brutal. Marine mammals belong in the ocean, not in concrete tanks performing for human entertainment. The longer we delay in acknowledging this reality, the more Parks and Haneul's will die needlessly, victims of an industry built on lies, exploitation, and the commodification of intelligence and beauty. If this story has opened your eyes to the reality behind marine entertainment, share it with everyone you know. Help expose the truth about an industry that thrives on public ignorance and corporate deception. Subscribe to our channel for more investigations into the industries that profit from animal suffering and human vulnerability. We're committed to telling the stories that corporations want buried and honoring the memory of victims like Park Ji-hoon by ensuring their deaths lead to meaningful change. Remember Park Ji-hoon's name. Remember his story. And remember that behind every smiling trainer and performing whale is a relationship built on psychological damage, corporate deception, and the false promise that love can tame creatures designed by nature to be wild and free. The ocean's most intelligent creatures belong in the ocean, not in our entertainment complexes. Park learned that truth too late to save his own life, but it's not too late to save theirs. Thank you for watching, and never forget, there's no such thing as a tame predator, only a predator that hasn't killed you yet.